Well, Kirtana, thank you so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Hey, Nathan. I'm Kirtana. I'm a current employee of Microsoft. I actually work as a product manager for Microsoft Teams. So, a competing product.
I
Uh,
know I should be using Teams.
but it's I pretty much work on something called growth experimentation. So basically, the idea is how do I run experiments on a day-to-day basis to make sure that more folks can stay on teams and continue to be engaged within teams instead of leaving teams and going elsewhere. So that's my job.
Do y'all have some concepts of like trying to recreate an office environment virtually type of thing?
Yeah, so a lot of my work, I mean, there's definitely work across the organization with respect to how do we make hybrid meetings happen? How do we have concepts in a way where folks from all over the world can look and feel like they're right next to you? So there are concepts like that going on. My specific work is with respect to apps inside like Teams, and I think Zoom has their own apps too. But the idea is how do we make sure we can have folks use these apps inside of Teams as opposed to go outside and use it? Because one of the things that we know is if you use the apps inside of Teams, you end up staying on Teams much longer, but you also become a fan of the platform. And then you're more likely to recommend it to others too.
That is that is very important. What are some apps? I mean, I'm thinking like Excel and like the web browser and like documents, but I guess video playing. I'm just trying to imagine what kind
Yeah,
of.
so there's basically like a bunch of like first party and third party apps. So then you can think about things like Zoom is one of them. So Zoom is an integration within Teams. Of course, like all of the first party apps like Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all of that. But also like third party apps like Asana, Jira that can help you do task management. So if you create a team and you want to do task management within that team, maybe that's one of the things that you use. And then there's specific apps for EDU. For example, there's like an assignment app. So that's
Right.
yeah. My mom's basically a principal of a school in India, and they're using Teams to function. And so she uses the assignment app, and all of the teachers that use the assignments app so that they can post assignments for all the kids. So now you're starting to enable really cool um, scenarios that are brought on by COVID-19, but also, I mean, it's nice to see that a lot of the businesses are able to function even without being able to be there in person because of all of these awesome apps.
I think there was this app that I used one time. There was like a group kind of connecting type thing. I think it's called wonder.me or something,
I believe
but
you.
but but basically you have like this environment and you can move your little icon around, and whenever you get close enough to other people, it starts like a video chat with the people
Oh,
that
that's so
are
nice, actually.
yeah,
There's
it's
there's like some pretty cool ones. Like there's one so that you can like provide kudos and praise for some of your teammates. There's a bunch of like games and stuff. So I think one thing that's been super common in Microsoft is almost every Friday for like an hour or two, we all do a team happy hour. And we end up picking like these game apps, and then we'll all be sitting and playing as a team because like you don't get to see everyone. You might as well just have some fun on Friday. So
sounds like a blast. But what are some other hobbies? So that's what you're doing at work. What interests you outside of work?
yeah, so the pandemic's been an interesting time. I think some like a lot of my hobbies have had to move online. So I'm continuing to learn music. I'm still learning Indian classical music from my teacher, and we actually end up doing all of that on Teams once a week. But during the pandemic, my boyfriend and I also attended ballroom dance classes. Then we'd go every week for ballroom dancing, different kinds. So we learned some salsa, we learned some cha-cha, we learned some swing. We learned like a bunch of the Latin ballroom dances. And so that was great fun. So we did that during the pandemic. And then I also ended up learning how to cook a lot more things than I ever could. So now I can cook like at least, 50% of the things that I've seen my mom cook, which for me is a big deal. Because my mom ends up cooking so much at home, and I didn't know like a lot of the things, and I couldn't make it taste like her stuff. So now I've been perfecting all of those recipes too during the pandemic. So it's been a lot of that for me. So those are, I feel like all of those things I spend a lot of my time on. And I am looking forward to actually joining badminton classes this next week. So I used to play badminton a lot growing up. And so being able to perfect that is also going to be pretty fun during the pandemic. So I feel like those are all things I do
And
outside work.
in the Bay Area, there's so many badminton places.
Yeah, so I actually currently live in Seattle. So I think I'll continue to live here as well with my new job too. So, but it's nice. It's like the suburbs um, in the Pacific Northwest. It's just so beautiful. So many trees. Um, but yeah, there's like a whole bunch of like fire stuff going on right now. There's a bunch of forest fires in and around. So we're not able to go out because it's so smoky.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's like super unfortunate.
There's a badminton place here in Houston. Did you get a chance to go to it when you
No,
were
I
here?
didn't. But I love playing badminton. I actually genuinely miss Houston, especially that frozen custard place, which is way too good. I'm just trying to remember the name of the frozen custard. Rita's frozen custard, I think.
I don't know this. I'm not a big fan of frozen custard, so I probably no big loss.
It was so good, man. Um, like me, Victoria, and all of us used to like go to this frozen custard place like almost every Friday. So,
That's interesting.
yeah.
Um, hmm. Well, I guess moving on to the topic I also wanted to talk to you about was did you know that NASA is planning to send people to the moon in 2024?
That's actually sounding super cool. If that's happening, I'd be super excited to see how that goes. I think you're the first person to tell me about it, so I'm glad to be able to learn from you.
So, that's kind of interesting. Most of the people I talk to, I would say about 80% of them, unless they're space people, that's a whole different category of people,
Yeah,
uh, don't know about it. And, it's not for lack of it being in the news or being on social media and things like this. I was wondering why you think that might be, why it's sort of not something that rises, the front of people's mind or news feeds.
I think it kind of depends on your interest area. So obviously, with the different social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, all of these look to show you more things that they think you will like, as opposed to helping you explore new topics that you may like. And so if I've never really seen any space related things on my newsfeed, I'm probably never going to see a space related thing. And so that's usually how that works, and so that's unfortunate. But I'm sure my boyfriend's heard about it. He's like he loves talking about space and all of that, but we don't share that interest, so then we don't talk about it either. I feel like that's the main reason why I've never heard of it. um, because I like don't go super deep into that. I feel like I spend a lot of my time going deep into music and other things.
That's kind of interesting. You talked about the algorithm, and that's a topic we should get into a little bit more. But
Yeah.
you also kind of touched on something else. We do this as people too, that we basically look at the things we're interested in, the things that we think other people are interested in, and talk about the intersection.
Yeah, pretty much. And I feel like that's a lot of it. But also I think sometimes with how relationships between people are, is you will start to explore a few things that the other person likes, but you're never ever going to go as deep as them in those things. So for example, I watch a lot of Indian movies and my boyfriend does not. And so when we started going out, he was like, okay, I'm going to sit and watch it with you, but he's never going to know as much as me about all of these movies. I keep track of absolutely everything under the sun.
Wow.
And then he loves space. And then so I ended up watching, I think like some documentary called Space Time, I think, something along those lines. So I ended up watching that with him. And then I was like, oh, pretty cool, like nice to learn about all of these like cool things, but I'm never ever going to go as deep as he does about it. So we're like, okay, cool. We'll just give each other or friends or relationships, whatever. Everyone gives each other like tidbits of information. And then they're like, okay, I'm gonna test the waters to see if they're gonna get as interested as me in that topic. If not, I'm just kind of going to stay at the surface and just talk about some day to day things. And so maybe in 2024, I will hear from one of my friends. And that time they'll be like, oh, by the way, NASA's trying to send some people to the moon, because that time it's like a day to day topic.
I do you know the last time we had people on the moon?
I don't know. I feel like the last time was like the 80s or something like that. I feel like, I don't know, 90s.
Would you believe 1972?
That's actually wild because we've made so much progress to go to, like, there's been so much stuff with respect to Mars and everything. So we've made like so much progress, but we've not sent more people to the moon since the 70s. That's wild.
Um, what's the longest international flight you've been on?
I feel like, yeah, I feel like my longest international flight is to India. So that's like what, 7 hours and then 7 hours of layover and then 7 other hours. So I guess like it's like 7 to 8 hours is probably my longest flight.
So
Actually, no,
altogether,
that's not true. I do sometimes when I go to India, we also fly through like Hong Kong. And so that flight's like 13 and a half hours. So yeah, 13 and a half hours is my number.
but from takeoff to actually reaching your destination, including the layover, you're looking at like 21 hours.
At the very least, like 21 hours, 21, 24.
Now, what if instead of 21 hours, it took you 30 minutes and you could do it for the same price as an equivalent first class ticket?
Oh, like I'd 100% do it. Flights are so torturous. I'm totally going to take that.
Uh, but would you believe such a capability is actually being worked on right now and should be available before 2030?
Well, I know we were talking about forgot what those things were called, but basically like they were connecting some big cities, right? They were connecting like LA and San Francisco, and then they were connecting like certain cities in like India, like I think Delhi to Mumbai or something like that. So basically it was like um a few hours of journey was going down to like 30 minutes of journey, but I actually didn't expect that. Are you talking about this with respect to like getting to the moon, or are you just talking about in general?
I'm talking about, say, uh, Los Angeles to, or sorry, how about Seattle to New Delhi?
That would be wild. I think at this point they're only trying. I forgot what it's called. Hyperloop. Okay, that's what it was called. Hyperloop. Yeah. So I know they were working on it for like smaller distances, but I'm sure the moment they start working on it for larger distances, I'd 100% be one of the first people to take it. It's nice to go back to India, and every time I think about it, I'm just like, man, this flight's just way too long.
Yeah. Well, Elon Musk is working on this thing he's calling the Starship, and it'll be a 100% reusable rocket that he'll be able to use for point-to-point travel here on Earth. So you would literally take off from like Seattle and end up in Tokyo in like 30 minutes.
That's actually wild. I feel like every time I thought about a rocket, I always thought about going into space. I never thought about it as and point A to point B, like travel on Earth.
And it's actually being built right now. He's built a couple of test vehicles in South Texas, actually.
Oh,
And,
that's
and so, I
insane.
mean, they're actually building real hardware, really testing it, and it's really happening. So it's kind of
That's actually
exciting.
wild. Would you be one of the first people to take it? I'm sure you would.
First people, I don't know. If you had asked me that before I started this project, I probably would have said yes. But kind of thinking through other people's fears has kind of made me think, let's let a few people go first.
Yeah, I think so. I think basically every time they start up these things, they started with shorter distances. So by the time they do Seattle to India, it'll be a while. And then at that point, I'll be like, okay, I feel pretty good about this. I'll take it.
Yeah. Um, so humanity 500 years from now, what does it look like to you?
I feel like it's not going to exist. So, and like my reasons are basically the lack of fresh water. I think uh, and generally like global warming is not going so well for us. Like the Amazon forests are depleting at like the wildest extent, with of course the government trying to sell away all of the lands to people, and the forest fires are just ridiculous. We've over the past, like something that's absolutely crazy is, so Seattle has Mount Rainier as our like biggest volcanic mountain, and throughout the year it's normally snow covered. But now if you go out, it looks really brown. We lost like 30 feet of snow during the heat wave.
Wow.
Had like a 3 day heat wave, and we lost 30 feet of snow on Mount Rainier. So I feel like I really don't know what we do for fresh water. And I think even if humanity were to exist, 500 years from now, I think it is. Um, I don't think we'd be able to see the poorest of poor people also be able to survive. I feel like it would be people who are able to afford to buy water, people who are able to afford to buy clean air for themselves. So it, yeah, so that's I think what humanity is going to look like 500 years from now. Probably be non-existent in some sense.
Wow. So anything can be done about it?
I mean, I feel like I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing more people who are trying to do their best on their own. We're seeing individual people trying to like reduce and reuse and recycle and try using lesser plastics and um, uh, adopt electric cars and all of that. So I feel like at an individual level, folks are doing some, but I think really like our bigger problems are industries, our bigger problems are um, folks who own very, very large businesses and large companies not being able to see or care about the environmental impact of their deeds. Um, and I think one thing that was absolutely crazy is a lot of things a lot of companies do, and I learned about this pretty recently. I think a lot of the companies do is they basically say they're offsetting their carbon emissions by buying these offsets from certain companies, but those companies actually completely fake it. They don't really do anything. So large businesses think they're doing something, or they pretend to be doing something for the sake of looking awesome in front of the world, but they're actually not doing anything. And at the end of the day, everyone's just making money through this whole thing. So I feel like things are only going to change if everyone starts to care. And I think by the time the absolute rich people start to care, it's going to be a very, very long time.
Wow. Um, so
Very
if
true.
so if life becomes multiplanetary, like Elon Musk wants to build a city on Mars with 1 million people by 2050, does that change the equation any way in your mind about the future of humanity?
I think that's pretty interesting. I'm very curious about um, how they're gonna make sure that like fresh water and all of this stuff is available. And I think that's all, you know, uh, that hopefully will all be enabled by science. Um, but yeah, I think that would be pretty interesting if that were to work. And I think it would extend humanity by some amount. But I also think that maybe not 500 years from now, but maybe like 1,200 years from now, if we didn't change our mindset, we'd bring Mars to the same kind of environmental problems as the Earth has right now.
Hmm. Well, Mars is quite cold. It's like, it seldom goes above 0 degrees Celsius. It's like,
Yeah, I remember reading some articles about how there were the different proposals about how to change the environment in Mars, and they were like, maybe we should nuke the poles. And I am just like, so much stuff is happening. Yeah, you guys do you just like do something about it.
so how does having that future, that vision, that future, keep you from being sad and depressed?
I think I think there's like I think a part of it obviously is the fact that I guess I know that my life is pretty short, and so I'm gonna try to do my best in my lifetime. I also think like for I also kind of believe in some sense where um like humans are also we try to extend our life by a lot. Like life expectancy was not this way, even like 50, 60 years ago. Life expectancy was not like 60, 70 years like it is today. It was much, much lesser. So humans try their best to keep extending their, life. And I think at the end of the day, we will have a bunch of things come up that will, in some sense, like cause the overpopulation to decline. Now we have COVID-19. Tomorrow it might be something else. And hopefully, um, we will start seeing people who want to have lesser kids. We'll start seeing people who care a lot more. And I'm hoping that everyone will just come together when everyone sees that other people are also struggling with problems. So that's what, like, there's some amount of hope, I guess, that keeps me from being super depressed in some sense. Also, yeah, as I was saying, like, I think we try to increase our life expectancy by a lot, but the fact of life is we are also like our DNA is also rapidly evolving with each like me and then my kids and then the kids of kids. And so when those kinds of things happen, there's also issues that happen with that DNA. Like it's probably like there are genetic disorders that come up. So I feel like that's going to be one of those things that also ends up taking a few lives. And so I feel like eventually the way I've always seen it is the earth has its own way of dealing with whatever happens on earth. And so eventually maybe things will just fix itself and it'll reset and maybe humanity will disappear, but obviously earth's going to continue.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people say you don't have to worry about saving the earth. The earth is going to be fine. It's the question of are we going to have people or not?
That's the real question, right? So I think all we can do is we should just try to be better. People try to be a little more sustainable, try to reuse what we can, try to reduce the amount of wastage, and then maybe things will be better.
So if it was safe and affordable, would you go to space?
Oh yeah, I think it would be a once in a lifetime thing. Like I've always viewed my life as something that I'm gonna have for 70, 80 years. And if during that time I get one chance to go to space, I think that would just be like a really life-changing memory for me.
How far would you go? Like a little suborbital trip like Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson did, or
Oh
to
gosh.
orbit, or would you go to the moon, or do you think it would go like to Mars and back?
I feel like it would 100% depend on the cost and what I can afford at that point, because I'm sure each of these distances will cost different things. But at the very least, it would be nice to do what Jeff Bezos did. Um, yeah.
But assuming cost wasn't a problem, I hear and you would go to Mars.
Oh yeah, I think that would be so cool. If cost weren't a problem, I would 100% go to Mars. But would I stay in Mars? That part I don't know. Like I'm at this point, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I want to come back, unless like, of course, all of my family can like go with me. Then I'm okay to go stay there maybe. But for now, I'm just like, oh, it'd be nice to do like a trip and come back. It's like, oh, you're going to Europe and coming back, going to Mars and came back. That would be pretty interesting.
Um, and how safe does it need to be?
It needs to be as safe as air travel is today, and air travel is very, very safe, safer than all the other kinds of transportation out there. So it would have to be that safe.
Well, that's pretty much all the questions I had. Did you have any questions for me or anything you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. I guess, what do you think is the likelihood of NASA sending people to the moon by 2024? That's literally like 3 years from now. What is your thought?
Well, I'm pretty certain we'll send people around the moon by that time. But actually, on the surface, walking around, I would say the likelihood is probably like maybe 1 out of 20.
And why do you think NASA cares about sending more people to the moon, given that a lot of the other countries are starting to explore other planets instead?
Well, NASA is also exploring other planets too. They landed a rover on Mars with a little helicopter flying around, and they're sending probes to Venus, and they have probes going to Jupiter, Saturn, and there's things even beyond. Um, but the moon has some resources that it would be good to see if we can use to make traveling those other places cheaper. Plus, there's a lot of good science on the moon in the sense of the sun uh, is a very complex, changing thing, and it's been emitting like solar winds and radiation, and the moon's been, absorbing these things. So by looking at the different, craters and different parts of the moon, you can kind of see what the past of the sun was like, as well as meteors are constantly hitting the Earth, and most of them burn up in the atmosphere. The ones that don't land in the ocean, those that land on land don't stay visible for long because you have weathering and the growth. But the moon's been traveling with the Earth through the same volume of space, and a proportional amount of those same materials have been hitting the moon. So the moon provides a nice record of kind of how dangerous Earth's orbit's been over thousands and millions and
Yeah.
billions of years. And so by understanding kind of when those impacts happen, are they coming in certain cycles? Like, I mean, there could be a whole bunch of debris that's in a 10,000-year orbit, and maybe we're 500 years from the next pass. Yeah, it'd be kind of good to be aware and prepare for that.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very interesting thought. And I guess, like, my last question is, like, what makes you so passionate about space? Like, what drives you? What drives your interest?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with just a realization how small the Earth is compared to the rest of the universe. And it's just like, it's like being in this huge mansion, right? And you're like, everybody's like in one room and nobody wants to go out. It's like, hey guys, there's so much out there. Or, maybe you're on an island in the middle of the Pacific and you're like, there's continents and all this other great stuff. And everybody's just like, oh, but the island's enough. We should just stay here. It's just like, the uh, it's just so huge. I just feel like that if we can raise our aspirations and our view towards the entire universe, maybe we could come together as people and go out and explore it together.
That's actually really cool, and I think that's a really interesting thought too. I think anything to bring people together, I'm always up for that. So,
Yeah. Well, I hope you come to Houston sometime.
yes, and then I will definitely visit. I'd be super excited to see, like, everyone from HP, all the team. I don't know how much of it is still intact and how much of it has moved, but I'd still be really interested to meet everyone that helped me all through my internship. I had such a blast at that point, so I'm super excited to come back anytime.
Well, that's good. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your evening and stay in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. Really appreciate your time, and I'm glad we got to do this and catch up.
Me too. Okay. Bye
All right.
bye.